Someone was telling us that we would have to have more awareness about how sacred this place is, and that we live here very well, very correctly, but as if it was at any other place, and that we don't really have awareness of what this place has and what this place means, as if we would live around here without realizing where we are, and without realizing what we are dealing with, without realizing what takes place here in the field of energy. And the person who made this observation considers this to be a sacred place. And they think this is not corresponded by the comprehension of most people who practically live common life that can be done in a special place. Of course, that common life in a special place is less common than in the world, but it's common. This is what this person is observing and asked us to review these topics. You know that these impressions always have a subjective side that belong to the people who do these observations. But as it is about a group, because if we are living common life thinking that we are living consecrated life, what is this, right? When there is a sacred place, a place that expresses the essence of an energy with all the freedom, because not all the places of the earth allow this. Certain rays, certain fires of the universe, there are certain waves of universal energy that cannot penetrate freely certain places of the earth. And as this universal energy, as these fires and rays can penetrate with more freedom, this that we call as a sacred place emerges. These energies that are manifested here on earth, they are expressed as our consciousness can receive them. So one of the factors that limits the creation of sacred places on earth is the human presence, because the human consciousness cannot observe a lot of pure energy. The human consciousness is still in a process that needs a certain balancing. That's why in certain sacred places, that is, in places where the energy can be manifested freely in its purest essence, these places are not inhabited. Humanity cannot get there. They have become places without inhabitants because most people wouldn't be able to bear it, or that energy would remove and a softer energy would come, which wouldn't be something good for the planet, because the planet needs these rays, needs this presence. In other places, human presence and the presence of the animal kingdom is kept in a controlled way. So when the human and animal presence is kept under control, these rays can enter more. Not much as a sacred place, entering freely, but it can enter at a certain degree, doing a special work on earth. In other places of the earth, human presence is allowed when these rays or this essence is manifested more freely than normal. But in these cases, human presence is selected. So we wouldn't be able to say that this is a pure sacred place because there is a lot of human presence, even if it's selected. It's not like on the top of the Andean mountains or the Himalayas, not like that, but it's a place where the human presence being selected, the energy, the fires, and all these blessings from the cosmos, the universe, and the space can flow. And what that sacred place expresses from the point of view of that energy that is on it is the power of manifesting the purpose of the evolutionary plan. So in a sacred place, when everyone starts making personal life and when personal problems, personal processes would be more advanced, it would cease to be a place like that because those rays, those fires would be limited, would become dense, not to be in conflict with that other level of energy. So this power of manifesting a purpose of the evolutionary plan is one of the characteristics of energy in a sacred place. Even if it's a place that's supposed to receive things like us who are human beings. So from the point of view of universal energy, the purpose and the power of manifesting the evolutionary plan is very available. So in a place like this, if a human being is offered themselves to live for the evolutionary plan, they can do it because the energy allows it. It opens the paths and builds this kind of life. And also, it could be in different proportion depending on the humanity that is the rays of healing and the rays of transformation. Because there is healing and there is the possibility of transformation on several levels of our consciousness and being, and depending on the disposition, the capacity of bearing that energy, healing and transformation can flow more or less freely. And the other kind of energy that flows in a special way, differently from other places of the earth, is what we call as fires of activity and the fires of vitality, because we can feel energized or we can be in activities, movements in different ways, in different qualities of energy. So in a sacred place, the fires that lead to activity and make us vital, they act in the proportion that we can bear. By us, I mean the human kingdom and the animal kingdom, because the animal kingdom is very close to the human kingdom in the face of these things, and the animal kingdom is also a factor of presence of these energies in a place. We would have to radiate that which we have in our consciousness that is the best, so we can keep the sacred place stable, so that it's not restricted and does not mix with other energies. So mix begins when our personal processes start to emerge. This is what the mixture takes place. This is where everything starts to become dense or be restricted. When we radiate that which our consciousness have as best, because each one is in a different evolutionary point. The sacred remains when everyone radiates the best that they have, the best that they can. And thus that place will be more and more confirmed as a sacred place. So there could be some special energy here, and we could change it completely. It would become a laboratory of our processes, and in a few weeks this would be done from the sacred point of view. So a group needs some balance like this, because as human beings are an industry of complications and processes, it's necessary to have a group that things can be alternate. When someone is imbalanced, others should be balanced, because if most are living their own processes, that would decay, that would weaken. So it's not that we must become a pure being and united suddenly, because we're also in the spiritual center for this, to consolidate the evolutionary aspects. But the group would have to be guided by the group of souls, or the energy of the sacred place. And this is what we mean as selection. Because the energy attracts or repels the human beings and animals that should be here, so that there is some balance, so that each being can go through the process that they must. Because we can't say, oh, I refuse to go through this process, but I was incarnated for this, I have an evolutionary path to do. But the group in the sacred place is a group formed like this. It's a group that is balanced. While each one lives their moments, most of the group are in their best attunement. So it shouldn't be a normal life, or a life with common people who do not have this vocation to make their own lives sacred. It means to be a vehicle of this universal energy, which is very pure, of these rays of healing and transformation, and these fires of activity which are intelligent. So my activity is not an activity that I have to do because of my process. It's an intelligent activity. That is, they are movements, actions, things that reflect one of these universal fires, which have the possibility of activating within an evolutionary plan. So life in a sacred place cannot be anyone's life or any person's personal life, because life is a ceremonial. Life is a ceremony. We must manifest this energy that flows there in different degrees. And then life is a reunion. It's a composition of the ceremony of each one in the face of this energy. This receptive ceremonial, the ceremony of processing of these energies, these fires, these rays, and the ceremony of the manifestation of this in life. So in a sacred place, it's an energy, it's a cosmic fire, it's a ray that lives within us and lives divided into several beings, human and animal beings, so that may play a harmony. For those who live like this, and for those who are somewhere like this for hours or for longer periods, those who live in a place like this, they have as a symbol, as a reference, the spiritual hierarchy of the planet and not humanity. Humanity is living something different. It's not a parameter for those who live in a sacred place. The parameter is the hierarchy. So as every sacred place has its spiritual hierarchy, it's very favorable if each soul or monad that participates there may recognize this hierarchy, may notice this hierarchy in the inner planes and relate to it. So a spiritual inner hierarchy in the sacred place is a hierarchy that is in contact with the monads or the souls of all the beings that compose that process. And there are kinds of hierarchy which represent the Devic kingdom and represent levels. And they do the same work with the animals of that sacred place. If animals already have a soul information, then that Devic hierarchy, all those hierarchical beings that are in charge of several subjective aspects, subconscious, they work with the animal kingdom. And this is not our work, this is the work of the hierarchies. Our work is to fraternally coexist with the animal kingdom, coexist equally. It's not like the kingdoms are in the same point, but they are in the same work. And there is a hierarchy, or hierarchies working in the human kingdom, and in the same process of making life sacred, there are hierarchies working with the animal kingdom. So the work is the same from this point of view. So the responsibility of human beings in a sacred place where there are animals, it's a responsibility of almost being instructors of those animals, to inspire them or impel them to become individuals. Because human beings who are individualized, they have a soul formed, it's very indicated for them to be instructors of animals here on earth, on the surface. So in a sacred place, this is fundamental. There could not be a sacred place without the animal presence at some level, because it's part of the service that human kingdom must offer. But here it's necessary for human beings to inspire in the hierarchy to treat the animal kingdom as it should be treated in a place like this, to provide animals a field of development, of evolution that they need in order to become humans, that they eventually need, as certain birds, to move to the Devic kingdom. So this consciousness is not only between human beings in a sacred place, but it's also between humans and the animal kingdom. For us to be in a service like this, for us to be in a sacred place, not as tourists, or to be in a sacred place not only to receive these vibrations, but to be in a sacred place serving, for us to be in service somewhere like this, which are not inhabited, because most are not inhabited. It's necessary for us to fully dedicate it to the Spirit, to the existence, totally dedicated to it. That's why in those places there would be a spiritual group, because on the surface of the earth it's what approaches the most to an existence dedicated. Humanly, it's what is the closest to it. So this existence totally dedicated is service, is the condition of serving. So when there are existences dedicated to this in that proportion, because the human existence can be dedicated to it, it's a dedication within certain limitations that the mind of the individual itself brings, and their planes will present. But when that dedication and when that existence reaches a certain level of quality, then in that place a force, an energy, even a presence that some can perceive, not only as energy and strength, but there could be an extension of an inner hierarchy, and that synthesis, which is a composition of energy of race, universal energy, fires, hierarchical consciousness, or extension of some hierarchical entity. So this collection forms something. I don't know a word in Portuguese, and as I don't know Sanskrit, I don't know what to say, but it forms something. And that thing is what will elevate that sacred place. That sacred place starts to have their own strength, their own movement. This would need to take place in the sacred place because the responsibility belongs to all of us, what should be formed and starts to live there. This is what leads everything that approaches that place to evolve, to take a step. So, in a sacred place, there is something, a presence, that just by connecting to it, they will walk, something will happen to them. So, if a place is fully active in that sense, even at a telepathic level, it will help people. So someone could take a step, even far away, not being here, mentally, and entering in the aura and submerging into this, which should be formed. These consciousnesses or these beings will be impelled impelled to do what? What is a sacred place? What does a sacred place do in a being? What does it do in the consciousness of a being? It moves that consciousness. It moves that being to transcend their evolutionary state. So if it's a being of the animal kingdom, it will transcend that kingdom to open to that human level, which is their next level. And human beings will be impelled to transcend that human state and enter that kingdom which comes next, the spiritual kingdom. This is the work of sacred places in human beings. So if in a place like this there is a spiritual stimulation, this is in accordance to the evolutionary purpose for that race, not an evolution that the mind of the individual is longing for. The individual becomes an atom, a representative of the race. Through them, the whole race will be impelled. So those who are in a sacred place, they are representing their race, the whole race. And this, that impulse, is impelling the whole race. So healing, transformation, all of this is done in the name of the whole race. So in a sacred place we learn, we train ourselves to serve the race. For these beings, that human form of loving makes them suffer, all of them. And it's very interesting because some beings have that human way of loving, and when they're in contact with something like this, they become sufferers. They suffer a lot, they are very complicated because their way of loving is not the superior love. These are ways of love which are human. They are very positive in humanity. But for superior love, it's useless. So the first tests of those beings who are in those sacred places and start to serve in those sacred places are the great pain, sorrows that they feel in the field of love because they don't have a pure love. So if they love someone, if they love a cause, they will suffer a lot because that does not respond to the level that they are emitting that love. They must learn how to love in a different way, in a pure way. They must learn how to love impersonally. So in a sacred place brings a lot of trials on this field. Of course, that those who do not love in any ways, they won't even be interested in a sacred place. For you to be in a sacred place, there should be some kind of love. And the tests begin in this field. Our way of loving is useless, is not applied there. Because there is acting and working a different kind of love, a different way of loving. And these are the first lessons that we learn in a contact like this. One more thing that is learned, which also produces suffering, and one also produces illnesses even. Why would a place like this have a healing energy? Because those who come here, they need, because there is this compensation in the sense that they are used to acting like a human being. They used to act as an ego, as a personality. in educated personalities, developed egos, human beings of high quality, selected human beings. But what happens within them is that their system of expressing cannot be used within there because it's different and they can feel that it's different. So, in addition to loving in a different way, allowing oneself to be bathed by the second ray that is always present in these places of the solar system. So in addition to learning how to love in a different way, which is not their own, this expression should be an expression of a more profound nucleus. And to be in those places in contact with that energy, this is the condition. Because if the individual cannot love in a different way and express themselves in a different way, they won't be able to be there. Because that superior expression, that superior love, is the pressure that that nucleus does upon beings. In the animal kingdom, this is also a kind of pressure. It's also a kind of impulse that animals will receive. And if an animal does not have the condition of becoming individuals, if they don't have the conditions of having this path, they could not bear it. They could not bear that pressure. This leads the individuals who are in a place like that or in a life like this to notice that they no longer have personal experiences to have. They don't have anything else to experience. So what people usually need to have experiences, live certain things, those who are in that energy, those who are being transformed in their way of loving and being, they won't have the attraction for having any kinds of experiences. Oh, now I need to experience this. Those who need to experience something, they must suffer a lot in a place like that, because this is not a place for this. Here, people, beings, must be not interested in any experiences that human beings can have, because they need to have. These beings either do not need it anymore, or they already have self-control to say, oh, I don't want this experience. I don't want to have that experience. They need it, but they won't do it. This also happens in a sacred place. This kind of power of controlling this exists. If the consciousness of the individual connects to that power. So these things, it doesn't mean that this will happen to all. This will happen as consciousnesses connect. So if someone needs the power to renounce some experience that they would humanly do it, if they need that power, they will have that power. They will counter that power, but it depends on how they are in the face of all this. It depends on how full they are in the face of this whole process. Otherwise, conflicts in these situations are very strong conflicts, very painful, than the conflicts people would have in their common life. Is this clear? So you see, for us to approach a sacred place and really live what is there, we would have to have this preparation or this vision. If not, we would only collaborate for that place to become vulgar, or they will enter a crisis. But if the individual in their consciousness, if they've noticed these things, they agreed on this. So in contact with the sacred place, they can really have a faster process, a process that is not really a normal human process, but it's a process in their humanity, which is the maximum degree of tension and harmony that they can have, that they can live in those conjunctures. With this, the bodies of the personality will become calm. But the bodies of the personality will not become calm with material healing. All of this that is done with the bodies of personalities in these places are things that support it, but what will really put those bodies in balance and calmness is for those bodies to be molded to those processes. And the bodies must have the possibility, the tendency, must have the decision of molding to those processes. So they will become calm, they will be in balance, they will be in harmony. As this takes place in the consciousness of the individual, but if in the consciousness of the individual this is all in conflict, there won't be something to treat those bodies. You can give all kinds of remedies to those bodies and nothing will work, nothing will calm it down. Because it's a different kind of thing that should be treated, it's a different kind of procedure. Anyway, it's a different approximation to healing, it's not normal healing, it's not the normal process of treatment.